Good evening. This is Simon with Trade and Perform Coaching with today's trade review for August 27th on the ES. And man, what a freaking awesome day. Sometimes it just everything kind of comes together perfectly, and you can see the whole playing field. And for me, it was it was a great day, especially considering I had to be out of the office for the morning, and I was at least attempting to trade on an iPad and a spare laptop in a doctor's office at that. So that I made money at all is a miracle. That I had a great day is just a big fat bonus. So I wanted to share what I saw in the market today and how I prepared for it. So last night, the legal disclaimers before we get going. This is for educational purposes only. Nothing in the blog, the Twitter stream, or in this video should be considered a trading recommendation. It's for educational purposes only. So trading futures can be a highly aggressive form of investing or trading, and you should consult with a investment professional before deciding to do so. So make sure that you're properly suited for it. Um, On to the good part of the day. So if you'll look, we had a couple of things going on from yesterday that were really important. Um, First of all, this Syria thing. So when we're looking at the market, I generally don't look at news at all. I could care less what the economic data could say. It gets into macro stuff, and I don't get into macro stuff because I find that it interferes with my focus. My focus is day by day, step by step, building my trading account every day. That's my goal. And I have no edge for the most part on economic data. That being said, this Syrian thing has been going on for a while. And, every time our government has clearly been trying to, and the president has clearly been trying to withdraw us from this whole Middle Eastern conflict situation. And again, I'm not making political commentary. I'm just saying generally what's going on. And clearly the public opinion polls do not favor us going into another Middle Eastern country at this point. So that being said, it was clear that the president kind of put his foot down with this whole chemical weapons thing months and months ago. And, when we came out and said, hey, we're moving troops, I believe we moved some troops into Israel, some Marines, we moved more ships off the coast. The Russians, for the first time in 40 years, they moved their Pacific fleet, the entire Pacific fleet, into the Mediterranean. And man, this is some dangerous crap that's going on, and it changes the fundamentals of what's going on, at least how it's perceived in the short term. And generally how it works with war or military actions is, as we build up to the military action, it puts pressure on the market. Once the actual action is taken place, or it's clear that there's going to be no action, and the market gets a relief rally or resumes whatever it was doing, and that's clearly more than a day out from here. So in last night's trade review and in the tweets, I was like, this is a fundamental shift, and it's causing a change in other time frames, meaning traders that don't care about intraday or one-day time frames are going to have to switch their positions up a little bit, and it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen. But for most of the day, I really felt like we could see some pressure all day long, that we would see wider than normal ranges, which we certainly did. We had, not counting the gap down, 14, let's see, from the open to the top, let's see, we went from basically 44 all the way down to 26. So that's for a 18-point range, when on our average day we're closer to a 10 or 12-point range, total range for the day, particularly in August. So that's almost a doubling of the range that we normally see. And the reason why that's important, I think it was great. You'll notice the rotations came back at every zone. 2 points was highly attainable. Amen and hallelujah for that. You didn't have to work too hard to get those 2 points today. Zones held. There was a kind of a snappiness and a speed to the market, and it's much easier to read when there's more participants in the market, and I totally welcome it. From my point of view, it's much easier to trade. And if you look, usually what the response is we have a gap down, and occasionally you'll get a gap down and a flush. In this particular case, we got responsive buying. And this is exactly why I don't come in and call big targets down or big targets up, or I very rarely will do it. Instead, what I want to do is I want to respond to the setups as they're given to me, and then have pre-planned scales that include occasionally a trailer if I think I can get lower levels. Okay, but I don't assume that I'm going to get those lower levels. If I get them, great, nice payday. If I don't get them, I don't really care. I know that I'm going to get my minimum targets and my minimum goals for building my account. And people don't seem to understand the value of, everyone talks about, well, set stop losses. And enough traders have issues just with that issue alone. But I find the more that you have to think while you are trading, the more susceptible you are to mistakes. I mean, this already is a stressful ass business to begin with. If you want to constantly have to reevaluate your position, man, that's a lot of work and a lot of uncertainty, and our brains just don't deal with all that uncertainty in a very positive fashion, and it can build fear. So I know where I'm going to get out ahead of time. I just let the market do its thing. Either stop me out, which is fine with me, or hit my targets and pay me, and that's cool too. Either way, I'm happy either way because I know that I can repeat my performance day after day after day after day. And you'll notice the key to me being able to do this was not what happened today, but if you'll go back and look at last Thursday and Friday when I was kind of taking my lumps, I think I lost 4.5 points on one day and I lost 3 points the other day. But the key to that was controlled losses. I had a positive week last week. I was never in a position of, oh my God, I got to recover my account. There was no big drawdown. There was no big losses. Everything was the way it should be. Okay, because I ended up working for 2 days for free, but here we are. We're on Tuesday. I'm more than made up for the losses that I had Thursday and Friday, and I have new highs since then as well. So I guess that's the essence of what I'm trying to convey in this vlog, is that if you can get through the difficult times without drawing your account down significantly, you have a great way of taking advantage when it gets easy, like a day like today. So let's talk about this a little bit, just go through quickly because it's pretty clear. We got rotations at every level. First time in, rotation up. First time in, rotation down. The second time worked. Second time is more difficult. I don't focus on it. I try to focus on the first touches of the zones, but this second time worked. Here's why second and third. Second and third are much more difficult. Okay, so here it is. If you took this third time in, you got flushed. Okay, but if you were patient, first time into the zone, did it drive you all the way back to the back of the zone? Yeah, you need to stop safely somewhere behind the zone. But look at this 2-point rotation. This is the first time. Prior support is now resistance. First time up into the zone, bam, flush. Now this is a trend day down, but even on a trend day down, look, notice every zone gave you a rotation on first touch. Okay, this is the only one that didn't quite give you 2 points. And you had to be able to identify that we were in a trend day down. Normally this was initial support, and at initial support I expect responsive buyers. That's my day in, day out bread and butter. However, on a trend day down, that's likely to give. Okay, and you just have to know where you're going to go and on what days you're going to go and say, okay, I can't take this trade. Also notice it got sloppier and more difficult in the afternoon, which is why I cut my trade size in the afternoon with rare exceptions. Okay, so this is all about my mental energy management, my decision management, and my trade management, and taking what the market offers and demanding nothing from it. Okay, I'm going to keep myself safe, and by keeping myself safe, I can trust myself. How do I build that trust within myself? I have a methodology by using my spreadsheets that constantly reinforce my edge and my execution of that edge, and also gives me an edge in manipulating that and changing that when necessary. Okay, I add that third level of experience when I can tell something's changed in the market and I can adapt to that quickly. Okay, so I think I covered that enough, and I kind of gave you a little bit of taste of what having a set plan, an edge, and executing that having a strategy and a plan to execute the strategy so that you can pull the money out of it, how important that is. So let's talk a little bit about tomorrow and what I'm looking at. So when I'm faced with a day like today, I want to go and I want to find out exactly what my alternatives are. So I come here, and the first thing I want to do is look on the day time frame and what's happened on other gap downs. We have significant gap down here, and everyone wants to talk about this gap fill, but it's not a promised thing. So we have an example just recently. Okay, so the first thing I look at is we had a gap down here. We closed on the low of the day. The following day we opened, and it looks like we pressed up into the previous day's range, and then sellers came in and we closed not at the lows but pretty darn close, right? The third day, again, we pressed up into the range. We opened pretty flat, and we tested up into the range and failed again and closed into the lows. On the fourth day, every day we're pressing up into this range, and we're not closing at the top of the range. We're either closing at the lows or the middle. Again, same situation here. Pushed up into the range, we closed at the low. This was the only day where there was a change in character, and this was also the first day that we broke any of the prior day's highs, okay, right here. And you'll notice that gave us a change in character when that occurred. Also, that was this was the first day where we gapped and basically went. Okay, so we didn't gap here. We closed here. We opened pretty much flat. Okay, we didn't gap here. Here we did gap and we went. And we closed above, and importantly, we traded above the prior day's high, and that was your clue that things were changing. So let's go back a little bit further and see if we can find another example of that. You can kind of see that in reverse, where we gapped, came back in and tried to fill, and then we closed near the high. The next day we pressed into the zone, closed in the middle, then we gapped again, and we closed above. It wasn't until the third day here we see a change in character when we actually traded below the prior day's low, and it gave a change of character, but notice it didn't necessarily start going down. And so then the third thing that I'm going to do in that process is I'm going to go back and I want to look at a 24-hour chart. So we see where the sellers swept down here, and I want to see what happened last time. Same thing, they swept down, we pushed up into the zone, but you can see that we kept pushing lower all the way through here, right? And the reason why I look is I want on the day time frame to clear the prior day's high. We almost did it here, but we didn't. We basically had a double top right here. We didn't do that until this day when we closed at the high. And again, you can see even on the overnight profile, a change in direction. Okay, so our choices, if we go back a little bit more, we can see that there was I had to go back quite a bit into this area here, but we can see here there was a minor gap down, then we had a long liquidation. So we had a bigger gap today, but that was followed by days where we were setting 3 consecutive days where the lows of the day were lower lows and lower highs. However, you'll notice after the first day where we closed near the low, we actually closed in the middle of the range or back in the top of the range each day. And this is the first day where we did not have a lower low and we had a slightly higher high. And again, that changed the picture of what was going on from here on out. So that's going to be your first clue, is that penetration of the prior day's high will be the first clue that there's a character change. Until then, I'll assume that we're probably going to, that we may test lower, but even if we push higher, as long as we don't penetrate above that prior day's high, okay, and until we do so, I will assume that we're going to try to push back down at some point, and I will look for a sign of a top. So that's how I'm looking at it. Again, do your homework, keep an emotional journal about how you're feeling about your trading, and learn to repeat your process. Make sure that you actually have an edge and that you have a plan to withdraw money or extract money out of that edge. My name is Simon. I hope everyone had a bang up day. These days are where you got to get paid big. And I look forward to doing it all over again tomorrow. I hope everyone has a great night. We'll talk to you then.